There are reasons that many retirees move to states like Florida, Texas, and Arizona. Warm weather, great social scenes, and of course, low taxes. But are there more factors that retirees should consider? Our next guest here to help us answer that question. Welcome, Rhian Horgan, who is the Silvur founder and CEO. Great to have you back here in studio with us.
Great to be back, Brad.
Let's talk about some of these places and what retirees should consider when they are kind of mapping or charting out where that next home is going to be to really settle down here. What is the top consideration you hear from a lot of retirees?
So I think the fact pattern is really changing. It used to be you collected your pension.
Yeah.
You sought out sunshine, and you were thinking about a pension, so you thought about state taxes, and it was pretty simple. Now you have to factor in things like Medicare, general cost of living, long-term care costs, and where your family lives. And I think Medicare is a really interesting one because you think about Medicare being a national program,
right.
But the reality is half of Medicare is priced federally, and the other half, things like Medicare Advantage, supplement plans, drug plans, are actually priced based on where you live.
Right.
So there is a $2,000 difference per year from the most expensive state to the least expensive state in annual Medicare cost differences. So if you think about a couple, a difference of $4,000 a year in your budget is a real number to be thinking about as you think about where do I want to live.
So what regions is that pushing a lot of retirees to then?
So I think historically, Florida was the destination that everyone was really focused on, and you still see a lot of appetite for Florida. But I think one thing that Florida is really challenged by, from a labor perspective, is actually the healthcare side of the equation. So Florida tends to be one of those places that is more expensive for Medicare. It's demonstrably more expensive when it comes to long-term care. So when you start thinking about perhaps needing kind of care later on in life. States like Tennessee are really jumping up in the list.
Interesting.
Yeah, so
Dollywood, huh?
Exactly. So lots of culture, but zero state taxes, much more affordable cost of living, and the labor market is a little younger there.
Yeah.
It gives that ability to have more labor to support actually the healthcare needs of retirees.
So how can retirees plan for higher costs and kind of budget for inflation in retirement?
So I think inflation is top of mind, obviously, given what we've been through in the last couple of years. And so a couple things that I think about. The first is don't underestimate how important your Social Security election is. You may remember from our last conversation, there's an annual inflation adjustment on Social Security.
Yeah.
A couple of years ago, that adjustment was 8.7%. So it was a real number. This year, it's more likely to be in the 2.5% to 3% range. The second thing I would think about is, what's your bridge to Medicare? And part of tackling inflation is making sure you're not spending down your assets too soon. We see a lot of folks who still want to retire early, thinking about how do I go from full-time work to maybe part-time, and then fully transitioning to being retired. And so I think about that 62 to 65 range is actually the most tricky because you are not eligible for Medicare yet. And if you retire at 62, you're gonna have to fund that out of pocket.
Right.
So what I see really savvy retirees doing is saying, I'm gonna find that part-time job that has really good healthcare benefits, and by not tapping into my savings pool as much, able to keep growing my portfolio.
And I mean, the thing that a lot of people consider is whether or not they want to pick up a part-time job in retirement. I mean, it is retirement so that you can rest on your laurels of your career and hopefully sit back, relax, enjoy time with family, travel. And so if there are ways to make sure that you are still properly budgeting for retirement while at the same time saying, all right, if I do want to remain social or remain somewhat active in a career perspective, are there smart ways to go about that too?
I love talking to early retirees about how they've hacked part-time work. And when I say hacking it is they're doing what they love and getting paid to do it. So it's you love to golf. Okay, so go work at the golf club and get your free hours.
You're giving away my plan
range.
here.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Here in New York City, next time you go to the ballet or to the theater, take a look at the staff who's working in the theater, and they often tend to be older. And what they say when we speak with them is, well, I get to see the shows and I don't have to pay for them.
Right.
And so I actually think that's super interesting. And then you have more practical, how do I get good healthcare benefits? And there's companies like, Home Depot, Starbucks that are just known for having good healthcare benefits and are always looking for folks to work more flexible hours.